This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is Amberine Tubasi, CFO of Airtable, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leaders podcast.
This is episode 942.
As I'm sitting in a room with major stakeholders in the debt community, JP Morgan to my right and Hercules Capital to my left, my treasurer and I were moving our funds out of SVB in real time in that meeting. And I'll just remember that experience as being, I cannot believe that this is where I'm sitting and I'm doing this activity while the bank that, frankly was the pinnacle of banks for the tech community for so long was going through this experience, and none of us knew what was going to happen the next day.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Sarah Spoja, CFO of Tipalti. Where were you when you heard the news about Silicon Valley Bank? It's a question that's become one of 2023's favorite conversation starters, at least for finance executives inside the tech realm. For Tipalti CFO Sarah Spoja, the query instantly summons memories of a conference room last March where she was sitting between two of Tipalti's future investors. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
So, hello. We're pleased to welcome back Sarah Spoja, CFO of Tipalti, who last spring did a capital raise. We're hoping to talk to her a little bit about that. But first, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jack. Glad to be here again.
So, Sarah, as you might know, we always ask up front if you wouldn't mind sharing a career lesson from your past. It's sort of a listener favorite. And I know last time I should mention you joined us for episode 7083, where you shared a really interesting career journey from including KKR and Bain and Company, a really interesting background for us. So if they want to tune into that, that's fine. But would you have another one for us? Something from your past that you can tug on?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, Jack, great to be here. And your podcasts are always so fun to listen to. So I always feel blessed that you've asked me to come back again and I got to share, maybe give back to this community you've built of all these CFOs on your podcast. When I was on the podcast last, I spoke about, my time in consulting at Bain, followed by business school, and then my time doing private equity at KKR. And I really think those experiences prepared me to move into a company, to, be the CFO and to sort of, run a lot of the finance back office of the company we're at. But over the last 5 years, I've just also kind of added something to what I think is the skill set that makes a well-rounded CFO. And it's also something that I honestly wasn't really comfortable doing even 5 years ago, that I've kind of had to build into my repertoire here. And that's that now, I'm more publicly facing for Tipalti. I do it in the kind of more obvious ways CFOs do it with investors, with the board, in those conferences all of us love to go to with the bankers and the investors and everyone else. And I started off being very nervous in those environments. And I just feel like I've had so many at-bats and so much practice with it that now it comes somewhat second nature to me. And it's something I'm now really enjoying. And I think for me, there was a lot of, frankly, imposter syndrome when I started off doing those, which is, why would this room full of investors or bankers care to hear about me and the Tipalti story and what we're building? And I think over time that wore off because I realized that these are all people who are just really interested in business and the business models, are getting to hear firsthand from the operators that are doing the, frankly, hard work in the companies. And I really started to enjoy those experiences, learning from them, the pattern recognition I get from doing those experiences, and sort of getting comfortable in my own shoes about being, kind of more visible for the company. And that plays off as well into how I think about my role internal to the company amongst, employees and other leaders in the company, as well as, frankly, within our sales and marketing organization, as the power user of our own products, I end up on the phone with our customers and our prospects a lot. And I've built my own CFO network through conversations with, our customers. And so I think it's just really, it's a small example of, all of us in our careers, and I'm 20 plus years into building mine, but all of us in our careers will have things in roles and in new roles that test a muscle that maybe isn't as strong as the other muscles that we have built over our careers to date. And, a muscle that maybe atrophied or never existed to begin with. And how do we lean into that experience and how do we grow from that experience and build comfort around that? Is something I've been reflecting a lot back on about how nervous those experiences were for me 3 or 4 years ago. And now how much more comfortable I am in those experiences and how really it just took kind of, going out there and doing it. I mean, there's really no easy way to get experience. You have to go kind of just do it and feel uncomfortable and learn from that experience. So anyway, that's the thing I would share with the listeners. I think many people probably suffer from the same struggle of how to learn new skills 20 years into a career. And all I would say is that you kind of have to keep taking the first steps along the way. And eventually you look back and it sort of feels like you've always been doing it.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you could maybe be a little more specific with us. I mean, are there certain events on Tipalti's calendar, whether they be marketing related or what have you, that suddenly they're saying, hey, see if Sarah can attend that. Whereas 2 years ago, you would never have made space for it or time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's quite different, for those in the audience who might also work in companies that are kind of selling into the office of the CFO, they may have a similar experience. But whenever you're the power user of your company's product, if you're the CMO of a marketing technology or the CRO of a sales technology, you're likely going to be someone who the company turns to, and for you and your team need to be more outwardly facing, for lack of a better word. They need to be providing feedback, providing thoughts and points of view. And so part of it is actually like training and scaling an organization within the finance organization that want to do that want to participate in this broader set of activities that aren't specifically like their core finance job, but rather, thinking about, okay, let me look through the new marketing messages for next quarter and let me just give my feedback over how they resonate with me or how they don't, so that the marketing team can learn from that, right? And so part of that is getting involved across the company in more diverse ways. Part of it is hiring a team that also is interested in that a little more, wanting to learn more new things, and then also opening up those opportunities for the team to take part in those sort of broader cross-functional things internally. I think that's pretty specific to people whose roles are the power persona of who they sell to. But if I think more broadly around the idea of how do we develop skills, as we're maturing in our career, I think it's more around like just sort of saying yes more often and saying, someone used to say, like, it's not just, just do it. The Nike campaign, it's like, just do it, while nervous, just do it while scared a little, a little bit of this premise of if you wait until everything feels perfect and you feel like you're absolutely 100% the top person to go do this activity, we frankly like waited too long and also how will you get to be that good at doing the activity if you don't actually start trying? And so I think some of it is actually just saying yes more often, accepting the invitations that you receive from these various groups that have panels they want you to sit on, or have events they want you to attend, or investors they want you to meet, and just sort of, going and being yourself, and realizing that they're not asking you to go and attend and be anyone that's not just yourself.
And to your point, be yourself. Be the finance leader. Don't be the CMO, and don't seek to be the CEO even. And this is an interesting point, which makes me want to ask about CEO, CFO chemistry. Because even on this podcast, CFO Thought Leader, we do get quite a few press queries to feature CEOs. And we're one of the few venues that routinely says, no thanks. And then, of course, we ask, but how about your CFO? And what's interesting is that with the door closed to CEOs, I think we get to yes a lot quicker with CFOs, because they know the CEO isn't being asked to forfeit the opportunity. They just never had it. So when it comes to team communication responsibilities, here's my question. Can you shed some light on how you're making it work with your CEO?
Yeah. So, when I met Hannah Meets for the first time back in early 2018, I immediately kind of hit it off with him and the other members of the executive team. The company was very different back then. Tipalti was 100 employees, and now we're 1,000. And, we were quite small in the world of what we were doing. And we hadn't really made a big name for ourselves yet, outside of, our small set of customers and things like that. And so I joined a quite small company. And now, of course, people would think of Tipalti as kind of a leader in mid-market AP automation and global payments automation. And so this 5-year journey, we've come a long way as a company. And, frankly, the whole executive team has really stayed together for that entire experience. And so there's a ton of trust amongst our team, lots of mutual respect, and also a lot of sort of low ego, humble team. And that, that only works really if the person leading that group, and in this case, our CEO, Hannah Meet, is does that in spades, if you will, kind of leads from that example. There's a lot that goes on in running these companies, and there's a lot of events, and there's a lot of speaking opportunities, and there's a lot of times that investors want to understand our business and speak to someone. And so, purely out of logistics and need, in many cases, Head and I have to split up these things that we're doing, and he goes to one, maybe in Israel where he lives. I go to the ones in the US, what have you. But we really are dividing and conquering. I think there's many principles to a good CEO, CFO relationship. And I think these principles are true in any boss employer relationship as well. But it comes down to, communication, trust, doing what you say you're going to do, and then following up. It doesn't necessarily mean sort of blind followership. There's certainly many opportunities where I look at a set of data, or I look at a situation and see that I think that, this might be, part of the right answer. He might look at the same set of data and say that, I actually believe this is the right answer. And then we have a discussion and debate around it. But it does mean kind of being open to those chances to influence each other, where people are kind of coming to the table with different points of view. But actually you emerge from that table with a more aligned perspective that brings together, lots of people's point of view. But I do think it's really important. I'm part of a number of CFO groups. And I will say the conversations around, CFOs really being nervous about, whether or not the role is the right one for them, whether or not they can keep working somewhere because maybe of a disconnect with their CEO, that conversation comes up a lot, and people have to make hard choices when it does. And I just think the CFO role in particular has, and CFOs in particular have a higher bar when they want to think about how much trust and collaboration and integrity and, everything else that's going into this relationship is, I think that bar is quite high for CFOs, and they take it really seriously, as do I.
We wanted to see if you could share Just a few of the details behind the recent capital raise. I think it happened earlier in the year. 150 million. Give us some background. How did things happen?
Yeah, this spring actually. So I think we announced it in May, we closed the round in March. So yes, $150 million of a debt raise. Part of it is a revolver. Part of it is more of a traditional term loan. And I think the question is, what a time to raise money. I guess I'll tell you the one anecdote from this experience is that I was sitting in the room negotiating the final terms of this contract. We had, our lawyers here, one set of participants on one side of me, the other set of participants on the other side of me, on March 8th of 2023, which for those of you who are CFOs, that was the Thursday. And SVB closed its doors on Friday morning and didn't let any more payments out. And so as I'm sitting in a room with major stakeholders in the debt community, JP Morgan to my right and Hercules Capital to my left, my treasurer and I were moving our funds out of SVB in real time in that meeting. And I'll just remember that experience as being, I cannot believe that this is where I'm sitting and I'm doing this activity while the bank that, frankly was the pinnacle of banks for the tech community for so long was going through this experience, and none of us knew what was going to happen the next day. And so, it was obviously a very, to get through that debt raise under that, recency of the news, and to sign the contracts just a few weeks later and get it completed, was a testament to the partnership, frankly, with those two parties that we had built over many months, that we had already gotten through all the tough conversations, all of the, difficult diligence, that we had built mutual trust, and respect with each other throughout that process. That's something as big as a global banking crisis that then brought down other banks with it would not have gotten in the way of us closing that transaction. And so, I'm really proud of what we built for Tipalti. For us, we actually raised a lot of money in 2021, and we haven't used the bulk of that money. And we won't need to do a primary raise, again at our current pace. And so this extra sort of capital was really just, the safety net, the rainy day funds. I don't know how you want to call it, but it was just the thing that really, for us, strengthened the balance sheet. So in this sort of uncertain macro environment, we could keep doing what we're doing and not worry about it. But certainly when we started that process in, December, January of the, prior, I certainly didn't think uncertain macro environment would include multiple bank failures. So it was quite an experience. I will always know where I was sitting when I, got the first winds that SVB was going to be in trouble. And, of course, I hope, like the rest of us in the tech space, that SVB comes back and sort of recovers from all of this and continues to be as helpful as they have been to tech companies for ages. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting experience.
When you share this story with others, maybe peers, what is it that strikes them that you were able to pull it off, or you didn't have second thoughts yourself as to whether you should wait or somehow?
Yeah, I think people all, again, I think there's a very small sliver of the population that will think about where they were when they heard that SVB was collapsing, right? And maybe that's just the people I hang out with, unfortunately, which might tell you something about my friend group, I guess. But, I think it's a moment that a lot of folks in the finance space, whether it's, bankers, institutional investors, VCs, finance professionals will remember, particularly if they were in tech, because we all have a story of, a company that we were a part of, or that we were on the board of, or something where SVB really came to help them and really came to be, part of a positive part of their journey. And so I think for all of us, there's the first point is, okay, well, I need to protect my company, and to protect my company means I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to do X, Y, and Z as quickly as possible before cutoffs, before wire cutoffs. But then the back of our head is, I really hope this isn't going where it looks like it's going. And so I think that's sort of a shared, concern that we all had on that day. Now, as far as doing the round, it didn't change the answer for us to the round. It certainly, I think, just anytime there's some disruption or uncertainty in markets, like people can get, cold feet. And so it was just a lot of checking in with everyone, making sure credit committees hadn't changed their mind, weren't just sort of stalling or anything like that, just because of the environment. And thankfully, again, I think, had we not built up the trust, respect, the kind of shared alignment and gotten through all of the, tougher diligence conversations, then maybe the results would have been different. But it was a great group we work with. I can't commend the folks from Morgan and Hercules anymore. And I've built some great friendships too with that group. And I think those two firms are really stepping in to help out, in some of the void that has, been created around some of the other bank closures.
So it seems like in some ways this capital raise is sort of the end chapter for COVID, or that chapter, or maybe it's the start of a new chapter. That might be the better way to look at it. But what's changed here? How has Tipalti changed given all of what's transpired? And this is a conversation we're having with many finance leaders. The nature of their business, the culture of the company in some way, perhaps, or certainly the remote versus the office culture has had an impact. What would you share with us?
So we are back to the office in all of our geographies. We operate in the US, Canada, the UK, Netherlands, that covers EU, and then also Israel, which is where our tech headquarters are. And we've been back to the office for a while now. We obviously have some remote employees, but those folks who are within the geography of where our offices reside are back to the office 3 days a week. So we're in a hybrid model. So from that perspective, I think we're kind of middle of the road of the rest of the tech world as far as getting back to offices as we could with where COVID was and the local rules and regulations related to that. From a post-COVID growth or kind of post-macro growth side of things, I am starting to see more recovery in the market, not really necessarily on the Tipalti side. Tipalti's business has continued to grow. We actually grew even faster during COVID, continues to grow very fast. New logo growth, remittance growth, transaction growth, all the different variables that we measure. And really that comes from the fact that for our business specifically, the need or the value that comes from automating accounts payable means that your team that was otherwise doing accounts payable in a manual fashion can now kind of do AP faster with less risk and spend most of their time now not doing AP, right? And so it's allowed accounting teams and CFOs to repurpose team members into other work, or to just continue to grow their business without having to add incremental AP folks to the team, because the software helps to streamline a lot of that operation that's otherwise done manually. And so that's something that during the heart of COVID, when everyone was working from home, you needed to do something like that in order to keep the business running, because you needed a way to digitize accounts payable so you could pay bills remotely. We would have tons of stories of customers who would, be a controller and a CFO will be meeting in a parking lot during the heart of COVID to dual sign checks, because, they're not working from an office anymore. And, crazy things like that. And of course, I think everyone has changed their processes and their governance, but it means that if you're not, sitting next door, shoulder to shoulder with the other people that have to govern and control the finances, then you do need tools like Tipalti to help you sort of stay on top of all of this stuff and log every moment and make sure that everything is going smoothly. But more generally, yes, when we when we announced the debt raise, we also announced a new CMO joining our company, a new GC joining the company, and our chief compliance officer actually returning to Tipalti after kind of a 6-month break from being here. So it was 3 big hires that we also announced along the same time. I think you're starting to see some more growth in the capital markets with a couple of key IPOs that are coming out in sort of September and early October. And so you are starting to see a little bit of the return to growth. At the same time, I think we're all waiting to see what the Fed does on interest rates, waiting to see what inflation numbers come in every month. And so I think people are dipping the toes back into, what does it look like on the other side of, kind of this slower economy. And, I think that that's only going to continue to help sort of, pour some gas on the Tipalti business as well as business activity returns.
So having you back with us, it presents just too big an opportunity not to ask you our signature question you might recall. Is for a finance strategic moment. Would you have one you could share with us?
Yeah, I think something I've been thinking about more recently is just how important it is when when your finance team has this sort of purview that is wider across the organization. Meaning, we see kind of lots of different sets of data across our organization from all departments, and sort of how important it is to not only notice and recognize these key insights that might be cross-functional, but also find the best way to communicate what could be done in a way where we're influencing the business, but also partnering with the business so that they're taking it on as their own. And I think as companies get much bigger, and Tipalti now at 1,000 people, no one single person has, all of the right answers. And we're all much better if we use a sort of wisdom of crowds approach in how we think about the business. But often what stands in the way of that is, clear communication, shared metrics, kind of shared alignment around the data. And I think it's easier said than done, quite frankly. And so, many finance leaders would say, okay, well, of course, that's be the best route to go. How do you do it? And I don't think Tipalti's, any better, any worse than others that are out there. I will say we have parts of our business where we are very, very strong at the shared metrics, shared approach, shared goals. And we have parts of our business where, those goals are set internally or they're not necessarily aligned with other parts of the business. And so we're really working at this premise of how do we make sure that we intertwine and align the goals across the board so that we're all really looking at the data in the same way. And that to me is sort of the goal for 2024, frankly, is how can finance be a better steward of that, and also kind of shine both a mirror as well as a flashlight, I guess, on these opportunities. And I think it's a work in progress. I love what I'm seeing in some spaces. I speak to like data owners and data teams sort of frequently. I try to speak to people outside of Tipalti as frequently as I can. And I always grab sort of little things other people are doing, and they always make so much sense to me. And, I often get frustrated. I hadn't thought of them myself yet. But, that's kind of the openness to continue to have a growth mindset around even what we're doing internally.
From episode 936, this is 1 Minute with Michelle Hook, CFO of Portillo's.
We did time and motion studies in our restaurants, and we spent a lot of time looking at those type of aspects, gathering a lot of data, looking at the conveyance in the kitchen and all those things. And we're, lo and behold, in the back half of 2024, we're going to build a much smaller restaurant. And it's going to have not only benefits on the cost side and the return side for investors, but on the team members' end, it's going to be easier for them to work and convey. And a Portillo's kitchen is very long and it's big. And so getting that engine right in the car was super important to us.
So we want to touch on CFO leadership style with you. We spent a lot of time talking about metrics with finance leaders and how, certain numbers are used to educate the organization and can really be impactful when the organization understands what those numbers mean. At the same time, many finance leaders will tell us it's not necessarily about the numbers. It's about conversations. It's about engagement across the organization and educating people sometimes, and managers one at a time, maybe. And to me that, we're talking a little bit about leadership style here. Are you approachable? How do you communicate? How do you modify people's behaviors? Any thoughts? What would you like to share with us?
No, I think that there are multiple ways to influence, right? And one is through frankly, some of the smartest people that I've worked with in my career, they never state facts, they ask questions. But by asking questions to people who are really smart on the business, it causes them to go think about things differently. And I think that is an amazing influence tactic. I think the other thing that's an amazing influence tactic that, again, finance leaders tend to have a little bit of a better access to this data is how can we ensure alignment around the actual core data that, we think we're looking at data that says X, Y, and Z, but, maybe this filter is off and that filter is off. So let me just really clarify, like, what is the data we're looking at? And is this data telling the story that we wanted to tell? And so I think just bringing facts consistently to bear in a very consistent manner. Every month we look at the same thing. We're going to measure it consistently. We can debate whether the measurement should be slightly different, but as long as we're measuring it consistently month over month, like, we'll be able to sort of have a trend line. So I think there's lots of different ways of influence. And, when I was at KKR Capstone, I would be sort of quote unquote dropped into some of these companies that were our portfolio companies. And although sometimes I had kind of a role in a team and it was much more kind of traditionally structured, I often would be more of a consultancy advisor type of person. And so, I think I learned in that role, how can I best add value, right? I mean, I could sit around and sort of just be a consultant there and not add value, unfortunately, but like that wouldn't have been a very fulfilling job for me. And so I really, I feel like that influence style where it's kind of saying, like, listen, I'm noticing this. I could be wrong, but here's like the notice, here's the pattern that I'm seeing and happening. Like, how do you explain this pattern? Or, here's the pattern I'm seeing now. And when I look back to last year at this exact same time, this was the pattern that we all observed. Can I shine a flashlight on this change? Right. And what does that mean? And I think these are situations where for each of us, we're all busy and we don't always have time to take a step back and look at data in a certain way. And so I think it's important to do that. And I think that, again, if you're surrounded by a team of people, all of whom want the best for the company and who are humble and low ego and trust each other, then this actually is seen as a real positive. People appreciate that. And I appreciate it when people do it to me and look at, hey, I've noticed that your revenue team does X, Y, and Z or whatever, right? So I think it can go both ways.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that, Sarah. We don't have a lot of time left, Sarah, so we have only moments to ask you about something most people don't know about you. What would that be?
Something most people don't know about me. I'll tell you a lot of things that at least some people know about me, but certainly not any of your listeners. I have a set of 6-year-old twin boys who keep me very busy. I think it's the ultimate multitasker. I also think about it as, having twins is sort of like 2 birds with 1 stone. So it was also the efficient way to have 2 children, which people laugh at me given my love of efficiency. And I used to play basketball in college. And so I grew up as an athlete and, love sports, did it from a very early age. And I think that for me, athletics, I went to a school that had a very good athletic program and also a very good academic program. I used athletics, frankly, to get into the best school from an education perspective that I could get into. And I continued to play a sport because I always felt like by, playing a varsity sport, committing to that part in university made me also commit more strongly to my academics because I kind of had to be, in order to get everything done, I kind of had to be focused and efficient. And I think it plays out well as you get older. There's something that you learn when playing a team sport and the resiliency of, losing sometimes, even though you wish you won and getting back up the next day and, practicing harder. And I think those, lessons, kind of continue to go on in life, even when, I'm well past my playing fitness level now. But, I think that it continues, I kind of like will always be a competitive athlete at heart, even if I'm no longer really competing anywhere. And so for me, this, I think about the stuff I do outside of work with my family or kind of even in athletics as being things that are also make me more well-rounded, but also kind of do make me, I hope, better at my job. you don't raise twins if you're not sort of thinking about prioritizing and efficiency and everything else. And certainly prioritization efficiency is a huge part of the office of CFO as well. And I think this desire to win, to compete and to win and to be resilient is also an important part of the office of CFO, right? We're out there trying to inspire our own teams. We're out there talking about our business with outside stakeholders. And I think people do respond to a little bit of that energy of people who are like, just put me in a position. I might not know the answer right away, but I'll keep fighting until we get to the answer. And I think people kind of who are good at doing that, a lot of them tend to be former athletes or other experiences that cause them to have sort of a great amount of kind of resiliency and drive.
Wow. We are closing in on our last question here. I just want to say thank you, Sarah, for really taking the time and answering our questions. Do appreciate it. We're finally going to ask you to look forward as a wrap-up question. What are your priorities as CFO of Tipalti over the next 12 months?
Yeah, no, I think it's, a really important thing to always be looking forward, frankly. Tipalti is at this, we're at a pivotal junction in the company's growth. We have shown product market fit. We have a large installed base of customers that we continuously grow and grow. There's a massive TAM, massive white space opportunity ahead of us. And over the last 6 quarters, we have continuously gotten stronger from a profitability, economics perspective as we've continued to grow top line at frankly faster than market levels. And so but it is really actually this idea of building efficiency, building a profitability mindset. And every quarter we've made big improvements on that, kind of in this, when we look back at the metrics, it's like a ladder, and it's an improving ladder. And it's been so consistent every quarter that it has built credibility with our outside stakeholders of our ability to deliver and deliver and deliver. And we've got a few more quarters of needing to do that to get to the place that I think Tipalti needs to be at to take sort of our next big step and milestone as a company. But we've shown a really good track record. It's been consistent over time. And that helps not only build credibility with others, but also internally in the company. Employees sort of understand what we're building towards. And I think that's important. I think the next year, generally, if I take a little bit of a step away from Tipalti, the next year, generally, it's going to be really interesting the ways in which AI come into play in the office of the CFO. For Tipalti, we have built in a number of AI tools inside of our platform. We're using AI to make auto coding of invoices even more efficient. We're using it in a number of other ways to do data discovery inside of our platform and the like. And so the ways in which the technology vendors that we all use in our tech stacks take AI, take the best parts of that, embed it into the already great technologies that we're used to using just to help all of us become faster, better, and more insightful about our jobs is going to be really important. And, I think those investments that we're making into the platform for our customers and that we continue to make, in fact, we've built out teams that are just doing this across our platform, will continue to sort of push the capabilities, the robust capabilities that we have in the platform forward. And so I'm really excited to see how AI continues to change how the Office of CFO thinks about, kind of how to be effective in the role. And excited that Tipalti gets to be a little piece of how that happens.
Sarah Spoja, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.